And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Starting off with tonight's weather, we've got weak low pressure areas, light snow here for the southwest interior. Up to St. Lawrence Island, some light snow along the Aleutians, mostly in the form of showers. Another trough approaching the southwest coast, and a weakening low pulling northwestward toward the Kenai Peninsula. Next system down here to the south moves northward tomorrow with gale force winds and rain coming into Kodiak Island, increasing wind and rain for the North Gulf Coast. Drying out, though, for the southern panhandle, light snow along the southwest coast up toward the Bering Strait. And then for Friday, this front continues to edge northward there, right over Kodiak Island, keeping it wet there, but not as windy as the whole gradient kind of relaxes here along the North Gulf Coast areas, but still plenty wet right on down into the northern southeast coast. More showery conditions down to the south, and still kind of snowy here for the southwest interior. And from there, coastal water forecast. Good gale warnings out for the south coast tomorrow. 40 to 45 knots out of the southeast. Seas shade over 20 feet. North coast, gale warnings. East 35 to 45. North 30 for the Lynn Canal. Southeast 25 gusts 40 for Stevens Passage. And southeast 40 knots for Clarence Strait. And for Thursday, we've got south winds 25 knots, southeast 25 there for Stevens Passage, and southeast 15 knots for the Lynn Canal area. And for the south coast, we've got south to southeast winds at 35 knots, east to southeast winds 30 to 40 knots for the north coast. And for Wednesday, for Prince William Sound, north winds 15 knots, north winds 15 to 25 knots for Cook Inlet, and northeast at 25 for the Barren Islands and for the Kamishak Bay area and the Barren Islands. North Gulf Coast, northeast winds 30 to 35 knots on the east side, about 25 on the west side, and Prince William Sound north at 15. And for the day Thursday, for Cook Inlet, north to northeast winds 20 to 25 knots, 40 knots out of the east and northeast for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay, and east winds 35 to 45 knots for the North Gulf Coast, east at about 30 for Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, north to northeast winds 20 to 25 knots, light variable winds for the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay. And then for the day Thursday, Kodiak Island, east to northeast winds 30 knots, north to northeast at 25 to 30 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, and northeast at 20 for Bristol Bay. Aleutians, eastern Aleutians, variable winds 10 to 15 knots, light variable winds at 10 knots for the central Aleutians, and north to northwest winds at 20 for the western areas. Outlook for Thursday, northwest 20 knots for the western Aleutians, central areas north at 15 knots, and the eastern Aleutians, small craft advisories, north winds 25 to 30 knots. And for the southwest coast, east winds 10 to 15 knots for Wednesday, east at 15 for St. Lawrence Island, east winds 25 knots for Norton Sound, and northeast at 15 for St. Matthew Island, light variable winds for the Pribilof Islands. And for the day Thursday, Norton Sound, northeast at 20, east at 10, St. Lawrence Island, 5-knot winds for the Yukon Delta coast, north at 20 for the Kuskokwim Delta coastline, north at 20 also for the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island. Up to the north, east winds 15 to 20 knots, central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, west side here, east at 25, and the Chukchi Sea, northeast at 15 to 20. And for the day Thursday, for the Chukchi Sea, northeast winds 10 to 20 knots, with east-northeast 25 for the western Arctic coast and the central coast, northeast at 20, eastern Arctic coast, east winds 20 to 25 knots.